It's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
Appreciate you listening. The phone number is 866-907-3339, 866-90-RED-EYE. I'm on Twitter and Facebook and pretty much all the socials at Dan Mandis Show. I host a morning show 6 to 10 Eastern in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. You can listen if you would like, 99.7WTN.com. So pretty much throughout the evening, there's been one question, and one question really that the American people have been asking, and that is, where did this cocaine come from? You know, the cocaine that was found in the White House a couple of days after Hunter Biden was in the White House? Big story yesterday for the 4th of July. Not only can Joe Biden not keep drugs from coming over our southern border, he also can't keep drugs from the White House, apparently. And so this is one of those stories where, number one, I did notice, I'm not calling any networks out, but there were some networks that actually didn't even report on the story that cocaine was found in the White House. Or you had a lot of other news outlets that reported the story that cocaine was found in the Biden White House, but they made sure to include in the headline that Joe Biden was not there. Cocaine found in the White House while Biden was gone. I mean, it was like, I don't know if anybody really expects that Joe Biden himself was, free-basing cocaine. I think, is that what they call free? I don't know. I've never done cocaine. But here's what I do know. What I do know is that the majority of Americans, when they heard this story, they immediately thought of Hunter Biden. They did. Even if you are a supporter of Joe Biden, you had to think of crackhead Hunter, right? And so now the question is, there's a lot of questions. Number one is, all right, so if the Secret Service found this cocaine, which they did, they were doing a routine check of the White House, and they found this cocaine. Did they fingerprint the cocaine? Now, the reason why that is important is because you have inquiring minds like yours truly that want to know if it's actually Hunter Biden's cocaine. And if they did not fingerprint that bag of cocaine that was found, and I'm going to tell you where it was found in the White House, but if they chose not to fingerprint that cocaine, because I guess it was in a little cocaine packet, well, then clearly they knew that it was Hunter's, right? It's almost like we don't want to know. And because we don't want to know, they didn't fingerprint it, which looks suspicious. Or they did know whose fingerprints would be on that bag of cocaine, and so they purposely didn't fingerprint the bag so that the testing wouldn't come back with Hunter Biden. And they might say now, oh, well, we touched it, we picked it up, silly us, stupid us, but the bag of cocaine is now contaminated. So there's no point in testing said cocaine. But here's the great thing about this story. And there's nothing great about the story, to be perfectly honest. It's just sad that on the 4th of July, when the president is trying to act all patriotic and stuff, he's dealing with the story of cocaine in the White House during a time when his crackhead son was in the White House. Now, where was it found in the White House? First, it was reported I'm just going to tell you, there's some confusion. First, it was reported in the West Wing. Now, if you don't know the layout of the White House, the lay of the land, if you will, in the West Wing, you have Biden staffers, you have the media working in the West Wing, you have maintenance staff in there, you've got janitorial folks as well. So there's a lot of folks that could have just, dropped the bag of cocaine. And by the way, I don't know how big the bag was. And you could tell me it was a kilo. That would mean absolutely nothing to me, because I don't know if I've ever even seen cocaine in real life. But still others say that this cocaine was found not in the West Wing, but in the library, the presidential library, 2 floors below the private White House residence and in part of, they say, the public tour. And by the way, still other reports show that the cocaine was found in a work area of the library and not the actual library. And so the question is, where did they find this? And why is it that this is seemingly all over the place? But all of these lead to one question. Where was Hunter? It was discovered on Sunday night. The discovery came 2 days after Hunter was last seen at the White House as he headed with his father for, as they say, a long holiday weekend. Now, look, I don't know if this was Hunter's cocaine. It could have been. Some people on the World Wide Web, and from a journalistic standpoint, it is the Wild West on the World Wide Web. And so we don't really know. It's hard to tell who has credibility and who doesn't. But there's some folks that are saying that Hunter was actually in this particular room, and the Secret Service knows that Hunter was in this room. And then lo and behold, they found this cocaine. Yeah, that's what some people are reporting. And so part of my question is, or my statement is that if Joe Biden was as much of a father, and this is where it gets a little awkward and uncomfortable, but I'm going to say it. If Joe Biden were half the father that he seems to think that he is, which he's not, he would have Hunter Biden tested right now to see if he's fallen off the wagon. And if he has fallen off the wagon, if it turns out that he tests positive for cocaine, well, then he needs to go back, Hunter Biden needs to go back to rehab. Because I'm thinking about if it were my kids, or I'd be willing to bet if they were your kids, your adult child, who has a history of drug problems and drug addiction, and a really bad drug addiction at that, well, he comes to visit the house, and you find a bag of cocaine, well, then immediately you start thinking, oh, crap. That is an oh, crap moment for a parent who cares. And so the first thing I'm going to do is go to my son and say, I need you to pee in a cup. I need to get some blood, whatever it is, to make sure that your son hasn't fallen off the wagon. I mean, isn't that what most parents would do? I bet you that's what you would do. Got to hold those kids accountable. And Ronald Reagan once said, trust but verify. And I totally agree with that. Now, you got some people that are saying, and this is what I was dealing with earlier in the broadcast here on Red Eye Radio. Some people are saying, well, it couldn't have been Hunter. I mean, this is in the presidential library. Why would Hunter go to the presidential library? Well, I would pose it this way. I remember when I was in high school and you were smoking cigarettes or smoking pot, whatever it might be, maybe downing a beer. You wouldn't do it in front of the teachers and everybody, no. You're going to sneak off someplace where Dad's not going to find out. Well, maybe that's what Hunter was doing down in the library. And when they say it was found in a work area near the library, or maybe it's a work area in the library, regardless, Hunter's not going to sit there and do cocaine where, you've got a bunch of people hanging around, especially his father. Then you got people saying, well, you really think the president's son, Hunter Biden, do you really think that he was so careless as to drop a bag of cocaine anywhere in the White House? And my comment back to you would be, well, this is the same Hunter that left a laptop full of incriminating evidence at a repair shop in Delaware. You know that, right? I mean, this is one of the most irresponsible men I've ever known. There's people that are saying he wouldn't be this irresponsible. And I would say, really? Because this is the same guy that is out there having sex with hookers and even had a baby with a stripper. And again, left his laptop at a Delaware computer repair shop that had all kinds of incriminating evidence, including, of course, all kinds of naked pictures. So now the question is, did the Secret Service do a thorough investigation of that bag of cocaine? The other thing that I would say, and you folks know this, there's cameras everywhere in the White House. Have the cameras been looked at? And again, I'm not saying that Hunter did it, but I'm saying that majority of people in America who know the story of Hunter Biden, know that he was at the White House in the last several days, and they find out that there's cocaine that was left in the White House somewhere, and everybody's first thought, I would say, immediately goes to Hunter Biden. I know mine did. The phone number is 866-907-3339. This is David in Maryland on Red Eye Radio. Hello, David.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I wanted to say what I think of Ben and Jerry. They, way before I knew their politics, they never have had anything for a diabetic to eat. And to me, that's discrimination because we're a group too.
So are you being facetious or are you being serious?
I'm being serious.
Okay.
They have had never any low sugar, sugar-free, or no sugar-added ice cream, and that's all diabetics are supposed to have. And I've had diabetes since 1988. So, I mean, a lot of the companies have sugar-free stuff for us, and the ones that don't, I don't deal with.
Can I tell you I'm just going to be honest. I don't think Ben and Jerry's is all that great. You ain't missing much, David. If you want sugar-free, Yasso bars, Yasso. Yasso bars are really good. I believe that they're actually sugar-free. Don't quote me on that,
I'll have to check.
Yeah, check those out. And I appreciate the call there, David. I don't know what to say about that other than with Ben and Jerry's. I don't expect much from Ben and Jerry's, and I don't think their food is all that great. How their ice cream is all that great. However, it is their choice to make these really silly posts on social media, damning America for stealing land from the Indians, which is what we talked about in the last hour. And a lot of conservatives are saying that there needs to be a boycott. But you know what? That is a business decision. And with Ben and Jerry's, it's also a business decision not to, make ice cream for diabetics. William is in Springfield, Virginia on Red Eye Radio. Hey, William, how are you?
Hi, Dan. I got two reasons why I think it wasn't him and one where I think it was.
You talk about Hunter?
Yeah. The first is that they didn't find it in the painting room. They found it in the library. The second one is that cocaine is a rich person's drug, and it seems like based on his alimony, he's probably still back on meth and not cocaine. And then the third reason why it probably was him was either to now say, oh, well, we need to put him in rehab and get him out of the limelight, or so he gets sympathy before his sentencing on all his crimes.
It's funny you mentioned that, William, because as I was going through that monologue, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I wonder if this is some sort of a sympathy move for Hunter. And you're right, to get him out of the public eye, because let's face it, there is an abundance of corruption allegations there with Hunter Biden. And as I mentioned during the monologue, nothing would surprise me, and I do appreciate the call. 866-907-3339. This is Red Eye Radio.
It's USDA's first look at hops acreage this season. And according to Lance Honig of the National Agricultural Statistics Service,
that acreage total that's expected to be sprung for harvest this season, we've seen a little bit of a dip in that this year. In fact, that's the second year in a row that we've seen a little bit of a dip.
Yet that is in comparison to strong hop acreage increases that peaked 2 years ago.
Overall are very high historically. This is a crop that's been growing, generally speaking, over time, largely because of the big demand from things like the craft brewing industry, things of that nature.
Despite that expansion, hop production forecasts from USDA focus on the 3 Pacific Northwest states, which produce the majority of our nation's hops.
Washington, Oregon, Idaho. We saw a little bit of a drop in acreage in all 3 of those states this year. We'll continue to follow up on this crop through the growing season to see how that translates into production as the season goes on.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This report is made possible by Cenex Roadmaster XL Premium Diesel and Citgo Lubricants.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, 866-907-3339, 866-90-RED-EYE. Dan Mandis here, and as always, appreciate the opportunity to fill in. By the way, Gary and Eric, they return Sunday night, Monday morning, and right now I want to say hello to Eddie in Spring Hill, Tennessee on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Eddie, how are you?
Okay, how you doing?
I'm all right. Go ahead, sir.
I got one question. Why haven't Joe Biden been impeached in 4 years?
I think the reason why Joe Biden hasn't been impeached is they know that it won't go anywhere in the Senate. And I think that the leadership has to be very – because Kevin McCarthy has been in the House, the leader of the House. Kevin McCarthy has been very, I would say, lukewarm to the idea of impeachment. Now, to your point, Eddie, and I've said this in my Nashville show for years now, the Democrats have lowered the bar for impeachment to the point where it would make all the sense in the world if the Republicans wanted to impeach Joe Biden. I just think that they do, again, understand that the chances of them actually being able to convict in the Senate is not going to happen, and they have to – unlike the Democrats who were just trying to, throw anything against the wall to see what sticks, the Republicans actually want to do whatever they can to hold the Biden administration accountable, but at the same time act responsible. And by the way, you have a number of different lawmakers, including Andy Ogles, who is, a congressman here in my area in Tennessee. A lot of them have brought up impeachment, have filed for impeachment against the president for any number of reasons, dereliction of duty being one. So, I don't think that Biden is ultimately going to be leaving the White House because of impeachment. I think what's going to happen is Biden will, I'm thinking, more than likely, he is ultimately going to be told by the party that the stuff with Hunter Biden is just getting way too much, and not to mention his cognitive decline, and Joe Biden will have to step aside. And I do very much appreciate the call. Very quickly, let's see if I can get this in. Tom is in Boston on Red Eye Radio. Tom, go ahead.
Hi, how you doing? I just want to say I think Hunter Biden is estranged from his father. He really was trying to set his father up. I think he left the laptop there on purpose, hoping someone would find the laptop. And the cocaine, the same thing. Now, why would you leave cocaine in the White House unless you were trying to set up something for your father? And I believe he's doing this because if you remember, he complained bitterly about the fact that Pops, the big guy,
I got to put you on hold, Tom. I think I know where you're going. Stay close.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. 1-866-907-3339. 866-90-RED-EYE. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
Thank you very much for listening. I'm going to get back to Tom in Boston. Tom, you were talking about Hunter Biden and how you feel like Hunter may be trying to set up his dad with the cocaine in the White House and the laptop as well. Let me ask you a question, Tom. Why would Hunter do that? Because if Dad is out of the White House, if Dad is out of power, well, then the gravy train for Hunter ends.
Yeah, he's angry at his dad. Now let's go back. Beau Biden was Joe Biden's favorite. Hunter was just an afterthought. So Hunter got into drugs, and they get this elaborate scheme to skim all this money. And Joe Biden said, "Listen, I get this scheme. You get all the money, and you give me 10%." And and Joe Biden got his cut. This was an elaborate scheme for the whole family, and they did it through these companies, these shell companies, and this family is corrupt. And I think Hunter Biden really doesn't like his father, and that's why he planted the cocaine in the White House. I think who would leave the cocaine in the White House unless you were trying to get somebody in trouble? Who would leave a laptop full of incriminating information?
Tom, I don't know if you heard my monologue on this, but Hunter Biden is a guy who is extremely careless. His entire life has been entitlement. And so he's very reckless. And so, I mean, you say who would do that? Hunter would do that because he's a careless individual. And despite what Joe Biden says when he says Hunter is the smartest man I know, he's really not all that bright. But then again, neither is Hunter's dad. So I appreciate the call. Thank you very much. Very quickly, Mike is listening in Chicago on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Mike, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm all right, man. Go ahead.
The reason I'm good, you mentioned a few minutes ago before the break how maybe this was being done, the cocaine for sympathy for Hunter rather, and I'm just wondering if it's found to be his cocaine, doesn't that negate the plea deal he has for the gun charges?
Yeah, I suppose that it would. I don't know how that legal stuff works, but if it is found to be his cocaine, I mean, you would think that he would probably have to go to jail, possession, that kind of a thing. So you would think. The question is,
right? Yeah, I don't know.
I was just going to say that the question is, did the Secret Service do their due diligence in trying to figure out whose cocaine it was, or do they know that it? And just so we're clear, folks, I don't know whose cocaine it is, or did the Secret Service, assuming that it was Hunter's, not do their due diligence because they didn't want to know because they already knew? Does that make sense, Mike?
Right. It makes sense. I'm just curious if it is to be found that it is his cocaine. What does that do with the charges that are against him right now, where everything seems to be being swept under the rug, assuming that he was a good man and kept himself clean for the next 2 or 3 years, whatever they said it was.
Yeah, we'll have to wait.
Taken away, it seems to me. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and I appreciate the call, Mike. I don't think that we're going to find out. A couple of things. I don't believe we'll ever find out if that was Hunter's cocaine. Because if it truly was found in the library, because again, remember, there's two different stories out there. There's the story that it was in the library, the presidential library, which is part of the tour. As I mentioned earlier, that's when you take a tour of the White House, the library is part of that. It could also be in a work area either near the library or in the library, but sort of off to the side kind of a thing. Or it was in the West Wing. And I don't know where it was found. But there seems to be a couple of very distinct, different stories. But for me, I don't believe that we'll ever find out if that was Hunter's cocaine or not. I believe that either, number one, they'll never officially announce whose cocaine it was. You'll have many Republicans and many quote-unquote sources that will say, oh, yeah, that was Hunter's. We've got 3 sources that tell us that was Hunter's cocaine and that the Secret Service, they did investigate it because they knew whose it was. And they didn't want to know what they knew, if you know what I mean. Or somebody will end up being the fall person, the fall guy. And they'll raise their hand and they'll say, yeah, my bad. I misplaced my cocaine in the White House. By the way, there's people out there, I don't remember who it was. Some people out there that are saying that basically the entire Biden staff, or a lot of the higher ups within the Biden staff, they're on these kinds of drugs. That's what some people are saying. I don't know if that's true or not, but quite frankly, some of the decisions that they make, I often find myself thinking, are they on drugs? So it would actually make all the sense in the world if they were on drugs. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. I was talking earlier about the $100 billion in thefts that we have seen in Democrat-run cities across the country. I don't know if Eric and Gary spoke about this woman, but there was a state lawmaker in Wisconsin, state senator. Maybe you heard the story of this woman who, her name, I believe, was LaTanya Johnson. And she was up there in the Wisconsin State Senate, and she was talking about a bill. She was talking about some legislation that would bring more police officers to the city. And the reason why they were doing this was because crime was beginning to spill from the city into the suburbs. And so now, if you're seeing this through the eyes of a progressive, you're kind of pissed off because the city of Milwaukee is disintegrating into chaos and crime and has been for a long time. But now the only reason that people are upset is because now the crime is spilling into the suburbs. And so then she made this, I would say, rather ill-fated comment.
If some of the people that were being directly impacted were being brought to the table, because to say that these additional police are needed because crime is spilling out into the suburbs, what about these babies who are being lost right in their own cities, the suburbs? Because they don't know a thing about how life is in the city.
So that is, again, a state lawmaker who, by the way, was told to resign. You had people that actually said that this is like a deplorables moment. I mean, you remember when Hillary talked about a deplorables moment and how the Trump supporters were a basket of deplorables or whatever the hell it was. That is Senator LaTanya Johnson saying F the suburbs. And so one of the things that I thought when I heard that, we see these stories all the time. Again, earlier, I was talking about how, latest research shows that $100 billion in theft has been happening in cities across America that are cities run by Democrats. And so one of the things that I would say to LaTanya there is, it's interesting that you say F the suburbs when really what has happened is that progressive rule such as yours has really effed the cities, as evidenced by the latest study and research that shows that $100 billion has been stolen from these companies in the cities. And so they decide to bail. And so when you look at what's going on under progressive rule, when you look at what's going on where, she is saying F the suburbs because the suburbs don't know anything about what's going on in the city. Well, there's a reason why. It's because a lot of the people that live in the suburbs were fleeing your kind of rule and your kinds of policies. I would say to Wisconsin State Senator LaTanya Johnson. And part of what I find interesting is she's out there complaining as a Democrat. She's out there complaining about the crime in the, city of Milwaukee. And my question would be this. How do you feel, LaTanya, about the defund the police movement? Were you supportive of the defund the police movement? Because we know that that was a big accelerator of crime. So if you're going to say F the suburbs, that's all fine, well, and good. But I would like someone to ask you how you feel about, the bail reforms that the Democrats have been embracing over the past several years, which has also been an accelerant to crime. In other words, it's really easy to get out in front of a microphone and a podium and say something like F the suburbs, when in reality, it's your policies that have led to the crime. Why do you think there's not enough police officers, I would say to LaTanya Johnson? The reason why there's not enough police officers is because your party was all about defunding the police. And so there is a big-time shortage of police officers. I'm sure in Milwaukee, there certainly is in Nashville, where I live, and there's a shortage of police officers nationwide. And so I would say you don't get to, on the one hand, demonize police, which is what the progressives do. You don't get to demonize the police incessantly on the one hand, and then complain that you don't have enough police officers on the other hand. I'd be willing to bet, by and large, that the people in the suburbs, they appreciate and they support the police. And by the way, I would also say to LaTanya, there's a lot of people in the city of Milwaukee that also support the police. But it was the very loud progressives. It was the very loud progressives and their defund the police wave that happened across the country that has you where you are now, which is basically screwed. And one of the things that I would say in wrapping this whole thing up is, how many times have we seen, and how many times have we said, as conservatives, which I am one, maybe you are, maybe you weren't, but how many times have conservatives have we said, well, it's too bad, so sad for the cities, but they're the ones that keep voting for this progressive rule? I thought it was really funny, to be perfectly candid. I thought it was hilarious when you had all of those people on the south side of Chicago screaming at the powers that be there because migrants were being shipped into their neighborhood. And they were really angry. And they were beside themselves. And they're screaming, not here, not here, not here. And I said on the air on WTN in Nashville, why not there? Because you're the ones that voted for Joe Biden. You're the ones that voted for the progressives. You're the ones that love to be the sanctuary city. So you're the ones that get to deal with the consequences. And I believe that that is why what Ron DeSantis and Governor Abbott, Greg Abbott in Texas have been doing, which is shipping these migrants to these sanctuary cities, was actually an absolutely brilliant move. 866-907-3339. We'll return next.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here in for Gary and Eric. They return Sunday night, Monday morning. What a weird headline this is. You ready? Earlier, we were making fun of the California Reparations Task Force. You know what they want to do? They want to, as they are now calling for the elimination of child support debt for black residents because the nation's laws have torn African American families apart. Isn't that interesting? Now, listen, a lot of these guys, regardless of skin color, a lot of these guys don't pay child support anyway. But the child support is supposed to be there for the kids. So while you may think that you're helping, these deadbeat dads, in reality, what you're doing is you're really screwing the kids. And why would you do that? And does that mean that the taxpayers have to further foot the bill to help raise these kids? Inquiring minds want to know. What a bizarre headline. Anyway, 866-907-3339, 866-90-RED-EYE.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.